Hello. Hello.
Kayamba, thank you. Sorry, I have to, this is the beauty of having the mic. I know you have the mic, but I have the bigger mic. Sawa sawa. Ladies and gentlemen, we now want to start day 2 and the final day of our second International Symposium on Intellectual Property Protection and Enforcement, ISIPPE-2. As is always the practice in this beautiful country of ours, I would like to call Mary Mwinga, the Deputy Director, Human Resources at ACA, to please pray for us so that we can continue with the rest of the proceedings. Mary.
Thank you so much, MC. Let's believe and pray. Our Father and our God, we come to you this morning with a lot of thanksgiving. Thank you, good Lord, for we have seen your hand. Thank you for the gift of life. Thank you for protecting us from our homes to this place. As we begin this day, Father, we welcome your presence. This being the second day, continue being with us. May we discuss that pleases to you so that this conference will give us what we wanted for this country. We thank you for the good health that you've given us, our presenters, the moderators, and the participants. Thank you. As we proceed with this day, we want to say that we have seen your hand, and this day will be beautiful. It is in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Thank you so much, Mary. Now, ladies and gentlemen, please turn to the person next to you and tell them the following. If you're German, like Schneider, if you're German, just tell them Guten Morgen. Tell them Guten Morgen. Aha, the person next to you. Now, if you're French, what do the French say? Someone? What do the French say? Bonjour. So you turn to the person next to you, you greet them, and you tell them what your name is. Now, this is how it will go. You tell them, bonjour, je m'appelle your name. Shall we do that? So, 1 second. Tell the person next to you, greet them in French, bonjour, and then you tell them your name, je m'appelle your name. 1 second. That is done. I think now you know the person next to you. I know a couple of you. For me, je m'appelle Norman Mudibo. I'm still your MC for this event. And indeed, I feel very much humbled and honored on the second day to still be your MC. Now, we are starting with a session which we would have started with yesterday morning, and I'm glad that we were able to find time and still be able to achieve our objectives. Now, according to my watch, it is now 8:20. I would kindly request the moderator and also the speakers to please keep it at 45 minutes. So if you can finish at 9:05, have a break of 5 minutes, Kayamba, to give us a number or two to prepare the next session. So kindly, 45 minutes until 9:05. I'll be brutal today. Now, just to set us off, we'll be talking or discussing around the counterfeit problem, and this will be from a global perspective. Yesterday, I listened very keenly on what was being discussed, and I also made some notes so that then you know that I also read and I know stuff around counterfeiting. Now, counterfeiting is a serious problem. And estimates, indeed, as we saw and heard yesterday's, the estimates really vary. Total amount of counterfeit goods sold each year is estimated at between $1.7 trillion and $4.5 trillion. Now, this has grown from about $30 billion dollars in the 1980s to the current trillion levels. These figures, ladies and gentlemen, would make counterfeiting at least the 10th largest economy. I don't know if you've gotten that. Have you gotten that? Let me repeat. These figures, the figures that I quoted, would make counterfeiting, indeed, if it was an economy, it would make counterfeiting at least the 10th largest economy in the world, which means it is, if it was an economy, it would have been above some of the world's largest economies in Europe. Ladies and gentlemen, this is not my, I'll just like now to ask our first speaker, who I think is from a country which I had mentioned the greetings, the first one. Ladies and gentlemen, kindly let's put our hands together and welcome our first speaker, Mr. Gregor Schneider, the EU Intellectual Property Attaché. Is Gregory? No, we will have the professor after the first speaker. Kindly. He is. Okay. So I'm informed that Professor Salim, who is online, do we have Professor Salim? Do you have Professor
Good morning.
Salim? Yes, I understand that he's setting the tone for this particular discussion. So let's have Salim, and then we shall go to Gregory. Is that okay? Very good. So, Professor Salim, are you on? You can start us off.
Good morning,
Yes.
everyone.
So you can do it in 10 minutes.
I will try my best.
Please do. Try 10 minutes.
All right, let me share my screen. All right, good morning, everyone. I hope you can see my screen. First of all, I would like to apologize for not being able to be there with you in person for this important summit. And I hope that yesterday's discussion were fruitful and to set us off on a hopeful trajectory of countering the counterfeit problem around the world. My name is Salim Al-Habash, and I'm the Associate Director for Research at the Center for Anti-Counterfeiting and Product Protection at Michigan State University in the United States. And last year, we conducted a global survey of consumers related to anti-counterfeiting attitudes, perceptions, and behaviors. And I'd like to thank the ACA for extending the invitation to participate with you today. What I would like to do today is to go over a few of the findings from our survey. Of course, you can have access to the survey results. You'll be able to get a QR code later for that. So I just wanted to start. I just want to. Everyone can see my screen. I assume yes. So as you know, the definition of counterfeiting slightly varies around the world. In the United States, this definition goes back to the Lanham Act, which defines trademark counterfeiting of any instance of reproduction, counterfeit copy, or colorable imitation of a registered mark applied to any instance of labels, signs, prints, packages, wrappers, receptacles, or even advertisements. And the important part of this definition is that it is not just necessarily a strict copying of a trademark, but anything that could cause a likelihood of confusion, mistake, or deception. And as you have been discussing in this summit, counterfeiting is a global issue that impacts the global economy. It also impacts communities around the world. And as we have come to learn in the past few years, it has direct impacts on the health and well-being of consumers. As noted by the MC, this problem has been growing. In 2019, data show that the counterfeit trade has comprised 3% of global trade, valued at roughly around $500 billion. Yet after the COVID-19 pandemic and the proliferation of e-commerce and social commerce, there are estimates that it's around $3 trillion. China tends to be the major producer of counterfeit products. 75% of all counterfeit goods seized by the United States Customs and Border Protection Control in 2021 originated from China, with other Asia-Pacific countries also contributing. And as noted also by the MC, the nature of online shopping, as well as e-commerce and social commerce, tends to pinpoint the upcoming challenges with counterfeiting. So estimates that in 2022, the e-commerce and social commerce market was valued at about $992 billion. And this is expected to grow in 2030 to $8.5 trillion with an annual compound growth rate of about 31%. So this only indicates that this problem is only going to exacerbate in the future. And there are quite different efforts at the law enforcement level to try and seize and desist these products. There are also emerging technological solutions, such as track and trace, smart packaging, and blockchain. However, one thing that is sure is that the supply chain for counterfeiting is growing in complexity in terms of the volume and velocity of the availability of counterfeit products, both on the supply and demand. And in this community, there is this metaphor of the whack-a-mole. By the time we figure out what the counterfeiters are doing, they are about 2 to 3 steps ahead, which make this issue of containing the counterfeit problem somewhat of a mission impossible. And in the United States, efforts have been culminating in the past few years to emphasize the importance of communicating with consumers. The US Congress announced that the month of July as the National Anti-Counterfeiting and Consumer Education and Awareness Month. There are also legislation that have been passed and are in the works to try and emphasize the importance of protecting consumers. So all of this comes at a time when we started our research focus on global consumers and their attitudes toward counterfeiting. And in this particular study, we emphasized how prevalent counterfeit purchase behavior is. We also tries to understand what are the common perception of counterfeit behaviors. And we emphasized trying to answer the why question of why consumers continue to buy these products. I'm going to try to touch upon these 3 questions in my short presentation, but you will have access to the report that tries to segment the counterfeit consumers as well as provide country by country findings. Just briefly about our research approach. In this research, we looked at 3 classes of counterfeit purchase behavior. We looked at intentions to buy counterfeits. We also looked at past behavior of non-deceptive counterfeit purchase or knowingly buying counterfeits, as well as deceptive counterfeit purchase, which deals with buying counterfeits and later finding out that they are counterfeits. In this study, we also looked at 3 different theoretical frameworks, looking at counterfeit purchase motivations, counterfeiting as a planned behavior, as well as protection motivation. And here I would like to only emphasize motivations for buying counterfeits. We looked at economic benefit motives, or being motivated by money and getting a good deal, hedonic motives that deal with the impulsivity of buying products online, value expressives dealing with expression of values, and social adjustive, which deal with social status. I'm going to skip just for the sake of time. We conducted the study in 17 different countries, and in Africa, we looked at Kenya and Nigeria, and I'll be emphasizing results from these two countries in this presentation. As I mentioned, from the 17 countries, we conducted the survey in 7 different languages, and we followed translation and back translation, as well as cultural adaptation mechanisms to try and ensure that the survey is understood across cultures. So we had about 13,000 participants and about 750 participants from each country. And for the global sample, we had an even split in terms of age, in terms of gender. The average age was about 38 years old. Most of the participants were employed, married, with child, and the extreme majority had shopped online in the past 12 months. I want to highlight just in the beginning a few of our descriptive results. In terms of the prevalence of buying counterfeits, for non-deceptive counterfeit purchase or knowingly buying counterfeits, 52% of our sample indicated that they have bought counterfeits in the past 12 months. And about 2/3 of the sample have bought a product and later found out that it was counterfeit. And as we look at the global percentages, for both Kenya and Nigeria, they're at about 59% and 55 and 50%. In terms of deceptive purchase or buying counterfeits and buying a product and later finding out that it was counterfeit, that percentage rises up to 86% in Kenya and 83% in Nigeria. And when we combine the findings together of both types of purchase, we find that 3/4 of the sample have bought a product that was counterfeit in the past 12 months, either knowingly or unknowingly. And in Kenya and Nigeria, that percentage rises to 88 and 87%, respectively. We also asked participants to indicate their intentions to buy counterfeit products in the next 12 months. And we see that on a global level, the average was about 2.73 out of a 7-point scale. We can see that Nigeria and Kenya both sit right above that global average. So a few of our actionable insights, we see that it is important to distinguish between this notion of this dissonance between purchase intentions as well as actual behavior. We see that participants indicated low future purchase intentions, which does give us an opportunity to understand the potential for behavior and attitude change as we look at consumer education, especially in countries like Kenya and Nigeria. We also need to distinguish between non-deceptive and deceptive counterfeit purchase. Even though we'd like to think that consumers are often deceived into buying counterfeits, we have to understand that some consumers go to online spaces to buy counterfeits, knowing that the products were counterfeit, which requires different intervention mechanisms. While non-deceptive purchase might be more amenable to risk-based communication, online safety and security would work better for deceptive purchase. As you would expect, consumers buy these products mainly on social media platforms as well as e-retail platforms. And we see a similar pattern in both Kenya and Nigeria. Interestingly, about 60% of the sample indicated that they bought counterfeits in Kenya from e-retail platforms, but we also see that interpersonal networks play a role as well there. In terms of social media platforms, we see that the top platforms are Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp. All 3 are owned by Meta, and the similar pattern is found in both Kenya and Nigeria. Nothing new here. The most popular categories of counterfeit purchase are clothes, shoes, watches, luxury products, as well as electronics. And both in Kenya and Nigeria, we see a similar pattern. Specifically in Nigeria, one of the highest percentages of buying medications online. We asked participants about their satisfaction with counterfeit products, and on a global level, 51% indicated that these products have performed worse than expected. And in both Kenya and Nigeria, we see that that percentage grew exponentially to 68% and 70%, respectively. For participants who bought products and later found out they were counterfeit, we asked them, what did you do with them? And the most popular answer was keeping it. And less than 1 in 5 participants indicated that they've actually done something with the counterfeit product, either by returning it to the seller, disposing of it, or posting about it on social media. In both Kenya and Nigeria, we see that Kenya, about 45% of the sample decided to keep the product, and 29% and 30% decided to do something about it and post about it on social media, which is quite higher than the global average, which presents an opportunity for some mechanisms to try and encourage consumers to spread awareness about the prevalence of counterfeit products. We also asked participants about the consequences of deceptive purchase. The most popular answers were loss of money at 30%, 21% said that they felt embarrassed, and at 10 and 9% experienced negative health effects and personal injuries. In Kenya and Nigeria, we see that loss of money is the top answer as well, but 40% of the Kenyan sample felt embarrassed, and 10% experienced negative health effects, and 7% experienced personal injury. What this tells us is that there is fragmented behavioral planning for what to do with products that we find that are counterfeits. Message and brand strategies could focus on leveraging post-purchase counterfeit recognition to build stronger relationships with brands. Kenyan participants were the highest in terms of keeping the product, which presents an opportunity to raise the awareness of consumers. In the next part of the presentation, I would like to highlight just a little bit of our global psychographic and predictive analytics, and mainly talk about why do consumers purchase counterfeit products. In terms of purchase motivations, as you would expect, money is a big driving force. However, hedonic values, value expressive motives, and social adjustive motives are also there. We see the same patterns both in Kenya and Nigeria. High motivations for economic benefits, as well as representation of other motives. So while it is important to understand that saving money is a big factor, consumers are also motivated by their desires, values, and social status to buy counterfeits. Interventions should capitalize on understanding why consumers buy counterfeits to more effectively change their attitudes and behaviors. So despite the fact that consumers often tell us that they do not want to buy counterfeits in the future, they still do, and it is important to understand why do consumers continue to buy counterfeits. And in this particular presentation, I'd like to highlight just a few of the findings related to trying to predicting non-deceptive counterfeit purchase. It is knowingly buying counterfeits. And here I would like to highlight the role of demographic variables and counterfeit purchase motivations. So in this particular instance, we did regression statistical analysis to try and predict the importance and strength of contribution of these different factors. And on a global level, we can see that consumers who buy counterfeits knowingly tend to be male, younger, more educated, and from larger households. And one interesting trend at the global level is that the more religious participants were, the more likely they were to buy counterfeits. So for each 1 unit increase in religiosity, the chances of buying counterfeits knowingly grew by 15%. And if you remember in the previous slides, I emphasized the importance of saving money, which is an important factor. However, when we look at how the economic benefit motives and hedonic motives predict non-deceptive purchase, we see that hedonic motives are far more stronger predictors of buying counterfeits. So, for example, for each 1 unit increase in economic benefit motives, the chances of buying counterfeits grew by 25%. However, that percentage grew by 93% for each 1 unit increase in hedonic motives. In Kenya, we see somewhat of a similar pattern. Kenyan consumers who buy counterfeits tend to be more educated, young, and more frequent online shoppers. Also, it is important to note that hedonic economic benefits motives were the only significant predictors of non-deceptive purchase. So for each 1 unit increase in the motive to buy counterfeits for saving money, the chances of buying counterfeits grew by 44%. Somewhat of a different trend in Nigeria, the only significant demographic predictor was being married or marital status. So the difference between someone who is married and who is not married, the chances of buying counterfeits grows by 72%. And we see that in Nigeria, we see a reflection of the global sample, where there is a discrepancy between economic benefit motives and hedonic motives. So what do we make of these findings? Hedonic motives on a global levels are much stronger predictors of buying counterfeits, as well as in Nigeria, but not necessarily in Kenya. What does that mean for consumer education? It is important to emphasize the nature and behavior of online shopping, as we tend to understand and change the attitudes and behaviors of consumers. On a global level, we see that religiosity played a major role in predicting counterfeit purchase, but not among Kenyan and Nigerian samples. For the Kenyan sample, younger and more educated consumers were more likely to buy counterfeits knowingly, while married Nigerian participants were more likely to be counterfeit buyers. I want to end with emphasizing other findings, and I'm happy to answer any questions. We can see that consumers around the world are not very expressive of their intentions to buy counterfeits, yet they continue to do so both knowingly and unknowingly. We asked participants about their attitudes toward counterfeit purchase, and they tend to be lower than the scale midpoint, which is very reassuring. In Kenya and Nigeria, participants viewed buying counterfeits less favorably than the global sample. Global consumers think that others, especially those who are not close to them.
Professor Salim,
Uh-huh.
you will need
Yes.
to wind kindly.
Yes,
kindly
one minute. Yeah,
yes,
1 minute. Yes. So we tend to see that consumers think that others approve of their behavior of buying counterfeits, and they think that others buy counterfeits. In terms of the perceptions of risks, we see that there's a good grasp of risks of buying counterfeits, yet consumers feel vulnerable, which presents a state of fatalistic thinking. We also feel that consumers feel confident about their ability to protect themselves from buying counterfeits. They also think that the actions they take on different platforms will help them protect themselves. While demographics play a major role in the global samples, in Kenya and Nigeria, these were less prominent. And we tend to see that there is a driver of hedonic motives in some countries, and in Kenya, it is mainly related to economic benefits motives. This is our research team. This research was funded by Underwriters Laboratory Standards and Engagement. And I would like to end here, and I'll keep this on the screen for a little bit for those who would like to get more of the findings, and I would be more than happy to receive your questions. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Professor Salim. Indeed, a very, very insightful and fantastic presentation. It sets the tone for our discussion in the next few minutes. And I would like now to invite Gregor to please do 10 minutes. You okay with 10 minutes? Or even less? Oh, I've been assured it will be less. Okay, please, welcome.
So good morning. Good morning, everybody. Um, well, I have read this study on consumer behavior by the team around Professor Al-Habash with great interest. And I would like to reflect on certain results. Yeah? It is, for me, it's important to take note of the high percentage of non-deceptive purchase. More than half of the global consumers, we are told, bought counterfeits knowingly, non-deceptive purchases, though only 21% of the sample were frequent non-deceptive counterfeit buyers. When we look at the products concerned, we see that clothes and shoes were the top purchased counterfeit products. Global consumers resorted mainly to social media and e-retail platforms to purchase counterfeits, and among those purchasing counterfeits through social media, 68% did so via Facebook. Interesting. This is, by the way, in line with the Europol IP crime assessment report for 2022. Clothing and accessories are still among the most common counterfeit goods encountered in the European Union in 2020. Clothing, accessories, and clothing were among the top 5 categories of approximately 66 million counterfeit items seized in the EU market or at the EU external borders. The consumer behavior report tells us that the motivations for non-deceptive purchases are different. So we have the economic motives, which is one of the major motive. And then we have also value expressive motives, hedonistic motives. And for me, it's interesting that it's not so different, the prevalence of these different motives. The report comes to the conclusion that in addressing the problem of counterfeiting, one size does not fit all. When communicating with consumers about the dangers of counterfeiting, one size does not fit all, we are told. Approaches tailored to specific consumers, consumer segments, and specific nations are necessary. The survey findings clearly show that such approaches vary widely by consumers' demographic and psychographic characteristics, past behaviors, and future purchase intentions of counterfeit products. So it recommends us different kinds of communication for different kind of country, and it tells us that occasional and frequent buyers require different messaging strategies. So different strategies according to different consumers and different countries. Now, I agree with all these statements. Those findings help us to build our strategies in terms of awareness raising and also crime prevention. And we see that we need to have different strategies. In particular, when it comes to the African continent, we have to have this different kind of communication in relation to different kinds of consumers and product categories. For example, when I look at merchandising articles, I lived in Cameroon during the CAN, the Cup of African Nations, and I lived it there. And it became obvious that, okay, it became obvious that we have very different perceptions about this act of buying counterfeit products, original and fake products during this CAN, during the African Nations Cup, were offered next to each other, like two different kinds of legitimate products, merchandising products. Our message in such context needs to be different from the normal message, but maybe also our intervention as a state needs to be calibrated. And this is now where I want to come to. We are talking about, the report talks about consumers. It talks about what we should do, how we should address consumers and the awareness raising, but how else should our intervention as a state be? And especially the case of merchandising articles brings me to another reflection. I think that this survey should take into account, Professor, also another actor. and this other actor is the right holder. Yeah? I suggest that we must not have a vision of a bilateral relation between the counterfeiter and the consumer to understand the need of state intervention. The relationship is in reality a triangular relationship that involves the marketing and sales strategies of the producer of the original product. The marketing strategies of the producer also have an impact on the consumer behavior. So we need to build our strategies as state authorities looking at this triangle of producer attitude and marketing strategy on the one hand, consumer behavior, and counterfeiters' criminal intentions. In Africa, this becomes, in my opinion, obvious. We cannot define the aims of our intervention and the ways of the methods of our intervention without looking at the attitude of the right holder. During the last days, we have discussed with those right holders here in different fora, and with those right holders who were willing to come. But there are others who have abandoned certain markets. I live in a small village in Bavaria, next to another small village, which is called Herzogenaurach. I don't know if you know it. I met in Cameroon, I met Roger Mila. Do you know Roger Mila? One of the most famous Cameroonian footballers. And I told him about Herzogenaurach, this village, and he knew it because he went there because it's the village where we have two big sporting articles manufacturers in this little village. And they have decided, I was told, like as some American brands have done, to leave certain markets to counterfeiters. So they have clearly decided that they don't want to distribute their products to certain markets, especially in Africa, and they leave it knowingly to counterfeiters. Why? Well, the Europol crime report says IP crime causes reputational damage to legal producers. Is this always like this? However, is this really always true? My answer is no, and I would go further. Markets which are flooded by fake products, which are bought for the motive of expressing value, are not necessarily producing reputational damage for the right holder. And this is something I could maybe observe in Cameroon when it comes to Puma products or other products of the sporting, of merchandising products. It might allow to increase the value of the product, which will be bought by upper class on the internet and outside the country. So clothes and shoes are the #1 fake product. And often, from my experience here in Africa, the right holders' attitudes are not clear in relation to what they want to do vis-a-vis counterfeit products. Meaning there's a lack of response, a lack of willingness to commit, to take the counterfeiters to court, a lack of interest of intervening. What does this mean for our state intervention? In times of limited resources, should we engage in the fight against counterfeiting when the right holders have adapted their sales strategies to the existence of counterfeiting and will probably not support anti-counterfeiting actions? Well, this is a question that I'm raising now here. It's a question to which I have no answer, obviously. However, I would say that in preparing our responses and communication strategies on the basis of this report and taking into account the report, we should also take into account those marketing and engagement strategies of the right holders. As I said before, it is not a bilateral relationship that we have to look on at, but it takes 3 to tango. Thank you very much.
Give Schneider another 30 clap. Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, what we are discussing here is just around counterfeiting, how widespread it is, different countries sharing experiences. And of course, as the speakers come, we would also want to draw some lessons, which then will inform our engagement and communication strategies going forward as a way of seeing how can we tackle this particular menace. Now, without further ado, let me now welcome the last speaker for this session, Jaraslow. 5 minutes, you'll be done? Aha, wonderful, wonderful.
Ladies and gentlemen, so please, by the time I have a presentation, so if my colleagues from IT could just put it, and in the meantime, let me introduce myself. My name is Jarosław Morowiec. I'm a policy analyst in the Trade and Agriculture Directorate of the OECD. First of all, colleagues from the ACA, thank you very much. Thank you very much for making me sweat. You made me sweat already 3 times. First of all, you made me sweat when I had to dance yesterday with you guys in the morning. You also made me sweat when you kindly invited me for this excellent conference, excellent networking possibility, and all this excellent venue that you organized. And you made me sweat because you asked me to present the problem of illicit trade and say, Jarek, set the tone for illicit trade. And I nearly got a heart attack. So Henry Mena, you're the person who told me that. It's on all you. It's your fault. I don't know where you are, but I hear you laughing. So I was seeing the problem. You know, OECD staff talks 6 hours about illicit trade, havoc in KICC, many hospitalized. They, you know, the journals with news and my face of me killing you guys with information. No, thank you for the speakers, because you eased my work very much. And now I will try to present in 5 minutes. So maybe just adding to the excellent presentations by Professor Salim Al-Habash and my dear colleague Gregor from the European Union. I would just like to give a little bit of perspective of the OECD and maybe add 2 or 3 ideas to what was said. I agree with everything, all the data that we have, it's perfectly accurate in our understanding. And basically, what do we know about illicit trade? Well, the thing is, we don't know nothing about illicit trade. Like Jon Snow, you know nothing. Well, Jarosław Morowiec, you know nothing about illicit trade. The problem is it's such a large-scale phenomenon. It's so complex, and the impacts are so complicated to know that the challenges of combating it are just basically trying to you know, resolve a problem that we know nothing about, or very little. If you can go to the next slide, please. And we can advance. Let's advance a little bit in the presentation. So next slide. Again, so this is all the work that we are doing at the OECD. So, you know, just for you not to think that the OECD guy is coming saying that he knows nothing. So we know nothing based on many reports that we are doing. So we are starting to understand a little bit the tip of the iceberg of illicit trade. So let's advance in the presentation. We use quantitative data and qualitative data thanks to our counterparts from many different international organizations, customs, and our colleagues in the countries. And based on that, we can say some trends and maybe provide a little bit of recommendations. So let's advance in the presentation, please. So what we know? We know that illicit trade is a super lucrative activity. It's easy money. We know, and it has been said already yesterday, today, again and again, it's a super large-scale phenomenon. It's 2.5% of global imports in 2019. It's probably even more now, very certainly even more now. It's a global phenomenon. We know that. Every single country is affected. There is not a single country that is not affected by illicit trade, and all sectors are affected. It's very difficult to find a product that is not being counterfeited. So I have this challenge with my colleagues that work in anti-counterfeiting. And each time I meet somebody new, I ask them, please think 5 minutes and tell me if you have an idea what can't be counterfeited. Usually the answer is we don't know, probably nothing, maybe some minerals, maybe some blockchain elements. Well, that's complicated to know. Well, and also every country is affected by it to a certain extent. So let's advance in the slide, please. Let's advance again. Let's wrap this presentation as much as we can. So next slide. So here is a small picture of a container. So this is a mighty EEE class by Merckx. This behemoth of the seas contains 18,000 containers. So the containers are generally a very good thing, and they raise the possibility of transport, they standardize logistics. Thanks to that kind of thing, we have a better, a higher level of trade, and trade is excellent. At the OECD, we always say that trade is good. We need to have more trade. We need to lower the restrictions toward trade, and we need to work towards a more transparent trade. But the problem is that if in every single containers of those 18,000, you can put a lot of things, including illicit ones. Let's advance. So here very quickly, and please, once I'm done with the presentation, don't hesitate to come. Let's discuss about that informally afterwards. So very quickly here, you can see how the sea transport is the main way of transporting and delivering the illicit goods. This is containers are the main source of illicit goods. Let's go to the next slide. So this slide is an echo to the previous presenters said. Basically, those are the charts of what is being counterfeited. You might not see that very clearly because the screens are relatively small, but basically what we have as an understanding is that footwear and clothing are the most counterfeited products. This is what the Global Survey of 2023 also understands. However, there is one thing that I would like to say here, and also this continues my idea that we don't really understand the problem. It's easy to find fake T-shirts and fake shoes. It's easy to find them. If you open the container, you see those fake shoes, you seize them, and you know that those are fakes. It's much more complicated to quickly understand pharmaceutical medicine products that are being counterfeited. You don't see that immediately. Sometimes it's very well done. With shoes and T-shirts, it's more easy. That's why we have more seizures of clothing and luxury goods. Let's advance to the next slide. Here again, the same statistics that we have with the global survey. So we have usual suspects where the fake goods are being produced and their origin. However, again, the data that we have are the data that are based on the seizures of customs, which is somehow problematic because if you're a country with excellent customs, well-founded, well-trained, and well-organized, you will have a lot of seizures. If you have customs that are understaffed and go through difficulties of training, etc., well, then you have less seizures. So the data that we have are not equal per sector, per country, per product. That's why you need to take with a little bit of distance all the data that we have. Let's advance in the slide. So let's again, please go another slide. And another one, please. So we know that there are a lot of impacts: economical, environmental, societal. Please let me just speak 1 minute about one specific aspect of it, and I will not enter into the other ones because it wasn't said yesterday, and many speakers who know better than me spoke very well about it. I would just raise your attention towards health and security impacts. Professor Al-Habash said something very interesting in the first presentation. He said that 40%, if I remember correctly, of people who bought fakes had health problems resulting of it. This is a very important information now. We estimate that around 40% of medicine in lower and middle income countries could be counterfeited. In Africa, the biggest problem are anti-malaric drugs and antibiotics. And this is something that for me, and allow me to have a little side story to the presentation. So I grew up in Africa. Well, you don't see that very obviously that I'm half Senegalese, but let's say that by heart I am. I grew up in Senegal, and like every child in Senegal in the 90s, I was reckless running in the garden. And as every child in the 90s in Senegal, I got bit by a mosquito, and like most of the child, I got malaria. I nearly died of it, but because of the fact that I was privileged as a diplomat's child in Africa, and I have access to the good medicine, the doctors that came immediately to the embassy to take care of me, and the drugs of quality that I got imported from France, nothing happened to me. I'm a little bit bizarre, yes, but that's the work. It's not the fault of malaria. The thing is, we know, or we think, that more or less 100,000 or even more children under the age of 5 might die every year because of fake malaria drugs that are being taken, and one do not have the effect, to have even worse effect than the drug. Yeah. So I wanted to pin that as one of the most prolific and problematic effects of impact of illicit trade. So let's go to the next slide. So the challenges. Thank you very much for this one. Well, I will wrap with that. We said that in previous presentations, there is a necessity of monitoring and continuing the empirical analysis. And to do analysis, we need data. To have data, we need to do the surveys, the research, and we need to share the data. So collaboration is absolutely paramount in this fight against illicit trade. And it's a cooperation between states, the customs, brands, postal service, everybody actually. Yesterday we had a breakout session with colleagues from the US FDA, and the US FDA has this great concept of all government approach, whole of government, we call that, to tackle the problem. We need to understand that we need to go hand by hand. You in Kenya have the luxury of having one integrated unit that works with illicit trade. The ACA guys, you're doing an excellent job. You need to continue on that. Well, in most countries, illicit trade is scattered all over the ministries. That's something that need to be tackled. So any initiative is good. As at the OECD, we are trying to propose some recommendations, but as my colleague Gregor said, there is no recommendation global that will be miraculously applicable to everybody. We need to go pinpoint to the countries and understand what is the problem in the countries. That's why we need to have more of things like today. Those sessions that we are having today are excellent for that, because we understand more and more what is the need, on the ground, what is the need in the region and in the country. And well, last but not least, we also need to we need to raise awareness in the consumers, but that's something that was discussed yesterday as well. Let me finish. Yes, last sentence, because I see the MC is behind me, and I'm starting to get a little bit nervous that he will attack me. Colleagues, brothers and sisters in this fight against illicit trade, thank you very much for having me here. We need to do it. We need to continue. We need to continue the collaboration. The impact is so heavy, and we know so little about this problem that every single initiative like this one today is a good one. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We shall continue this conversation. So if you have any questions or any clarification that you want, I would ask you to please pack it, and we shall be able to tackle it in the next session. So thank you very much, our speakers. I would like us to take some 2 minutes. Kayamba, give us one as the next panel of speakers come on stage. Kindly, I would like to have the next panel of speakers, of course, starting with Mr. Yusuf Ahmed, Director Enforcement, ACA, Madame Angela Ndambuki. I think I've seen someone like her passing right behind me. And last but not least, in terms of the speakers, we have Mr. Tobias, Legal Counsel WIPO. We'll also have Nguyen from Netherlands and Amanda from South Africa. Kayamba, 1 minute as the panel of speakers. Join me here on stage.